Today we're talking about the benefits of making exercise hard sometimes. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Jessica Valant, a physical therapist and Pilates teacher, and I want to bring science-based knowledge, empathy, courage, support, love, and hopefully some fun to the journeys we have with our bodies. There is hope and strength in your body, and my goal is to help you find it. Hi, and welcome back to Meet Your Body. I am so happy to be talking with you today. I did not plan on recording a podcast today because the kiddos are home and I can hear them running around and banging upstairs. So I didn't plan on recording, but I got this thought in my head and I needed to get it out. I needed to talk to you about it today. So I'm hoping that they stay quiet and calm. And the likelihood of that is small, but we'll see. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So I wanted to make the title of this something that's pretty long, but I'm going to tell you what it is. Why exercise doesn't have to look pretty and the benefits of making exercise hard sometimes. So that's a long title for a podcast episode, but that's really kind of everything we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about why exercise does not have to look pretty and good all the time. And then along with that, the benefits of making exercise hard. And because it's hard, it's not always going to look pretty. And this came about for a few reasons. One is I get a question all the time. I always have for years and years and years. And it's a very valid, great question about, Jessica, how do I know when to make exercise harder? Like, how do I know when I'm ready for an intermediate class versus a beginning class? How do I know when I should add weights? How do I know when I should add time? How do I know? And that's a really, really great question. And I typically talk to individuals through that, especially if I'm working with you one-on-one. And then a few weeks ago, I posted a photo. It was a video actually, of a move that I was doing at the gym, because I'll post those periodically on Instagram. So I posted something and I talked about how I was using heavier weight, and someone messaged me and said, it looks like you're not ready for that weight. Like, you're shaking a lot. I don't think you should be doing that weight. And one, yes, it was fine. I was doing that weight. I appreciate the concern, but I was using control. I knew what I was doing. It was completely fine. But then the other part is I agreed and I said, yeah, this is hard for me. And it absolutely looks like it's hard. And it kind of hit me that we have this idea that exercise should maybe never look hard. Like, maybe it should look pretty easy. Maybe it should feel easy. And so that's where these questions come in a lot about, how do I know when I'm ready to progress? How do I change things up? How do I know when I'm ready to change things up? So those are kind of the things that I wanted to talk around today. I want to talk about that idea of exercise looking easy or looking pretty and where that came from. And then we're going to talk about how you know when kind of to make things harder. So when you start making things harder, and then strategies and ways you can make them harder. And we're going to talk about that idea of beginner, intermediate, and advanced classes, because I have a lot of feelings and thoughts around that. But we're also going to talk about the times that you shouldn't be making it harder, the times when you want to stay really consistent and even a little bit easy. So those are the things we're going to dive into today, and let's get going. So I want to talk first about this idea of what exercise should look like. So like I said, I got that DM a few weeks ago. And then this morning, actually, I took another video at the gym. I was doing lat pull downs, and it was the heaviest weight I had ever gotten on a lat pull down before. And I happened to take a video of it, and it was not pretty. It was not pretty at all. And it was hard. And I got 2 reps in at that heavy weight. And I just knew that it wasn't going to look super easy when I posted it. But that was the point. I thought in my head, gosh, what if I waited until this looked easy? What if I waited to post this heavy weight? What if I waited until I could do 3 sets of 8 repetitions really easily? I would be waiting months. 6 months, maybe a year. I don't know. I'd be waiting so long, and I'd be doing everyone who follows me a disservice, because that's not how it works. That is not how fitness and movement and life work. And I think this idea that things are easy come from fitness instructors. We are absolutely to blame. And I know even from years and years ago teaching in person for all the time that I did, I would be doing a move, demonstrating to class, and I'd be talking through it and telling them what to do. And inevitably, many times a week after I demonstrated, someone would say, "Oh my gosh, how do you even do that?" and talk at the same time. I could barely breathe and do that. And I would always say, this is my job. This is what I do for a living. So I need to be able to show it to you, but I don't expect it from you. And then I would go to a yoga class, let's say, and the same thing would happen. I would watch the instructor do this crazy, amazing handstand and talk through it and think, oh my gosh, I can barely even breathe I can't do that at all, actually. How do they talk and do it? And it's that same idea that we're kind of comparing ourselves to people who do it all the time and do it for a living. So that's one thing just to understand about fitness instructors, whatever modality we work in, whether it's teaching lifting weights or Pilates or yoga, whatever modality it is. We have a lot of practice. It is our job. And so again, don't necessarily sit and compare yourself and think, oh, I need to look like that before I can do something. Absolutely not. That's not the way I look at my yoga teachers or any other modality that I do. So make sure that you aren't confusing where you are with someone else who's been teaching and doing it for 20 years. So definitely that fitness idea, and fitness instructors can fall into some of the problem of how we make things look easy. And then I think a huge part of it is social media. Social media is a curated place where we post the most beautiful shapes and we see the most beautiful shapes happening. I watch people doing acro yoga and flips and things that I could never in a million years. I think in my head, okay? I will think this in my head. I could never in a million years do that. But I've never tried it. And all I'm seeing is their end result. Right? So if it's someone doing, let's say, a really hard arm balance, because that's a lot of times what I'll look at and say, how do you do that? They're doing a really, really hard arm balance. I am not seeing the 100 times that they tried and fell to do that move. I'm seeing the end result because that's what gets posted, understandably. And so I think all of those things have kind of come to tell us inherently, we think subconsciously, oh, that's the way it should look before I'm ready to progress. Or that's the end result, that it looks like that with ease and again with this beautiful shape. And I'm here to tell you, it just isn't true. We need to just take that completely off the table when it comes to what we think the end goal is. Because first and foremost, there's no 100% end goal or end to this journey of movement and fitness. It is an ongoing journey. It's going to follow us forever. There will be ups and downs. And yes, we are definitely going to hit goals and we'll hit markers and then we'll move to something else. But it's not like there is this one high pedestal gold medal that we achieve and then we're done. That's not the way it works. So it's always kind of ebbing and flowing and it's always moving on a spectrum and it's nuanced. So take that idea of, all right, I just want to be able to look like that doing it. I would say take that off the table. And the other piece, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but as you probably know, because I've talked about it and posted about it, I've been trying this trapeze class. And I definitely do not look like most of the people doing it by any means. It's not pretty. It's hard for me. And I've realized recently most of them have been dancers their whole lives. So they make these shapes that I have never made and I don't know how to, like pointing their toes and these long lines and verbiage that I'm learning. But I was never in that. I was never a dancer. I was never in the dancer world. So accepting that I may be able to do some of the moves, but I still am not going to look the way they do because it wasn't my training from when I was 5 years old. I'm 45 now. I'm not going to start over as a dancer. So accepting that is really freeing as well. I'm not going to compare myself to them anymore. I'm going to stay in my lane and I'm going to keep doing trapeze because I like it, but I'm not going to try to look the way someone else looks doing something. I have a different body. I've had a hysterectomy. I've had 2 babies. I have so many abdominal muscles cut and things repaired. I'm not going to be able to look that way, but I can look like me and I can own that. And so that's what this is really about, is owning where you are and not thinking that you need to be or look like someone or something else. So let that piece of it go. And the other side, an important thing to remember, is that we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. We have to be okay with it being hard. And that's really something I am actually trying to dive into a little bit right now in my life, is being okay, being uncomfortable, trying something new, having it be hard, being a beginner at something again, having to ask questions, being the only one in a class who doesn't know what I'm doing. I think it's good for me. I think it's good for all of us, but we tend to think that being uncomfortable is a bad thing. And I'm starting to learn that it isn't always a bad thing to be uncomfortable. So this idea of progressing and making things harder, one, let go of the idea it has to look a certain way, right? And then also understand it is going to be hard sometimes. It is a slog. It is moving through mud and it's a fight sometimes, but that's okay. That is absolutely okay. And it's part of the human experience to understand that sometimes being uncomfortable is what it takes to get us to the next point. But before I dive into actually making things harder, I want to talk about the times you don't want to do that, because there are times absolutely when that is not a goal, whether it's for myself or for my clients. It absolutely isn't always a goal. So there are times when our goal is actually relearning a movement pattern or somebody starting new. So this can apply to things like people in physical therapy. If you have an injury that you're trying to rehabilitate or you're trying to manage, if you have a new diagnosis that you're figuring out, if you have a condition that changes how you exercise for a set period of time. So that would include pregnancy or postpartum or post-surgery. Anytime that you're told you can't lift this amount for this time, right? Or you can't do crunches until this time. So those kind of things. Autoimmune diseases would fall into this. And then also any kind of trauma that you're kind of working through right now. So any of those things that make you feel unsafe in your body, though, whether it's temporary or it's been going a long time, no matter what's happening around that, those kind of things is not the time to jump into really hard things and make yourself really, really uncomfortable. It's actually the time that we need to make you feel safe in your body. During those times, we retrain movement patterns or breathing and body patterns and strategies in order for you to feel empowered in how you move and be able to make your own movement choices. So in any of these cases, I actually give people specific programs based on their needs. So it's going to be a little different for everyone, but based on their needs, I tend to give a specific movement kind of program, and I tell them it's their homework. And I say, I want you to do this for 4 weeks or sometimes 8 weeks, and you just repeat it over and over and over again. I need people to repeat that hundreds of times so that the body can really bring that in and make it a part of your bones, actually, make it so much a part of your habit that you know how to move that way and that it feels 100% safe doing it. We create that foundation of safety in the body. And that is really important. That's not the time I tell people I want you jumping into really new hard things. That's not the time I want you getting super uncomfortable. Will it maybe be uncomfortable if you have a fear of movement? Absolutely. It doesn't mean it's an easy time. It means our goals are a little different. My goal is actually to make you comfortable moving during that time with this basic kind of program. And then once you've gotten through that phase, that's when we can move on to the next phase. But really, again, if you're in any of those kind of states that you feel just anything around that idea of being either unsafe in your body or afraid to move because of pain or feeling like you just don't know what to do next, so you're not doing anything at all, if you're in any of those places, you want to really work on building that consistency that teaches you how to move your body in a really safe, empowered way. Then we get to move on to the next place. So once you've been through that, and not everyone has to go through a really specific program like that. If you've never experienced an injury or had to rehab anything or recover from anything, you might not even be in that place. And that's great. But most of us have to get through some kind of phase one like that. And it might even be kind of a beginner program to get you used to movement, whatever it is. I think of that time as something that, again, you kind of embrace, that you learn how to feel really empowered in your body. And I tell my clients, at least my goal is that once you are through that, you feel more comfortable making your own choices for movement. Like you can start to choose, oh yeah, that sounds fun, or that doesn't, but you don't have that fear around movement anymore. So once you're past that, then we get into that idea of, when do I make things harder, right? Like, how do I know? And especially, this is a big one if you have been through that first phase and you've rehabbed and your physical therapist or your doctor says, yeah, you're good to go. Go do whatever you want. And you think, what? Well, what do I do now? I mean, I've been there after my prolapse surgeries. After 10 weeks, I was told, do whatever you want. You can go run, you can lift your kids, whatever you want. And I thought, what? Are you serious? Are you serious? Well, what do I do now? Because that sounds really scary and really uncomfortable. So I've been there, and those are really good questions to ask. And so just know, if you are in that place, but you're still having a lot of fear, just stay in that phase one, stay in that kind of place of getting used to the consistency of it, of trying to eliminate the fear. But then also know, not all the fear goes away. Okay, and again, I'm saying this from a lot of experience. My first year after my hysterectomy and my prolapse surgeries, my first year when I was told over and over, you're safe to move, you're safe to lift, you can do it, I was scared every time I did it. And I had to make myself uncomfortable. Now, no, there's a difference between making yourself uncomfortable and then taking really not smart risks. I didn't do that. I wasn't out there doing crazy things that I couldn't control. But literally every time I did a squat with any kind of weight, I was kind of scared. I had to be a little uncomfortable. I would talk myself through it. I would use all the protocols I knew. I knew I was safe, but there is that idea in the back of your head. Whenever you've been there before, you know it. That thought of, oh, I don't know. I don't know if this is safe. I'm not sure. And so just understand there's a really big difference between being uncomfortable and then also taking, not smart risks, which I don't do. I don't do that with my body. So it's okay to be uncomfortable. That's okay. So when to make things harder? Again, get through phase one. That's first off, that phase we talked about. Get through phase one and then just start to ask yourself some things. First off, are you bored? Honestly, are you bored out of your mind with movement? If you are so bored, typically it means you can do it really easily, right? Not all the time. I mean, you might be bored doing something hard, but usually when something's hard, we don't quite get to that place of, I'm so bored. So that's one thing I ask people. Are you just bored? Are you bored out of your mind? Second is, do you want different results and different that you're not seeing? And that can mean lots of things. It might mean that you just aren't gaining the strength that you want to gain. Maybe your balance isn't improving. A lot of times it's functional. So let's go back to that example of me kind of after surgery. If I had waited 6 months to do anything because of fear, I could have asked myself, do I want different results? And I would have said, yeah, because I'm still not strong enough to lift my son, which was my main thing after I had surgery. I'm like, when can I lift him again? He was, how old was he? Two or three. And I just wanted to lift him again. So those are the kind of results that I'm talking about too, is can you do the things in life that was your goal to be able to do? And if you can't do them, then it's time to change things up. And you don't always have to say, oh, how do I make it harder? It's just, is it time to make a change? Like I said, if you're super bored, if you're not seeing the results you want, if you're not getting better, if you're not improving, if your pain isn't changing, if you can't lift your groceries like you wanted to, if you aren't reaching those things, you need to ask yourself, how do I change this up? And a lot of times it's by giving yourself a little more of a challenge. So another thing to ask yourself is, have things just gotten really easy? So could you do it in your sleep? Could you do it while reading a book or in front of a TV? Could you just do it for 2 hours and not break a sweat whatsoever? Is it not challenging at all? If it's gotten too easy, then that's another thing to know that it's probably time to move on. And then another really important thing to know is just what you need. Okay, so I really want to touch on this before we go into that idea of how to make things harder. But what do you need in any given time? So I talked about kind of that phase one place. And I also mentioned that life is lots of gray area and it's a spectrum and it's an up and down thing. So you're going to get through phase one. Then you might be in this phase of, oh, this is fun. How do I make things harder? And I'm going to change it up and I'm going to try this and that's cool. And then all of a sudden life will throw you a curveball and you'll need to go back to phase one again. And that's happened more times than I can count in my life. Every one of my many surgeries, all of my pregnancies, or maybe going through, again, a trauma, like when we had a death in the family, I really needed to come out of that place of making things really hard and just feel really safe and supported on my mat again. I needed to just go back to those exercises, laying on my back, feeling comfortable, feeling safe. And so understand that life will tell you a little bit also what you need. So ask yourself what you need. Do you need to make it harder to get kind of, again, are you in that bored place, or are you in the place where it sounds exciting to make it harder? Or are you in a place where you really just need the support of feeling safe in your body again? And maybe you go back to phase one and then come back into that place of making it harder. So it's an important part to kind of ask yourself and just know that movement is there to serve you in whatever way you need it to. And then let's talk a little bit about how to make things harder, because that's a really important question too, because it can be a little bit confusing on how to make things harder. Because I have clients ask me all the time, I'll give them their physical therapy program or their homework to do for certain goals. And they'll say, oh, if it gets easy, can I just do more repetitions? And again, very valid question. And that is one way. But there are lots of other pieces to that as well. So let's talk about how. So yes, one way would be just adding repetitions. But as I mentioned above, just adding repetitions could get you to the point that you're doing 100 or 200 repetitions. And at that point, it means it's too easy. Okay, so if you can do 100 or 200 of something, it's probably too easy at that point. Unless you're back in phase one again. Okay, I'm not talking about that anymore. We're out of phase one. Then it's too easy. All right, so just adding reps can, to a point, help. But if you're doing 50, 100, it's too easy. All right, so here are some other ways to change it up. One is switching the levels of a class. Now, I promised you I was going to talk about this idea of beginner, intermediate, and advanced classes. And again, I've been doing this a long, long time and have gone around and around on the idea of the labels of classes for 23 years now. But this is what I want you to realize about that. That is the label of the class. It is not the label for you. All right, let me say that again. When a class has a label, beginner, intermediate, advanced, it's the label of the class. It is what is offered in that class, and it is who that class can accommodate. It is not saying what your label is. I don't want you to sit and label yourself. It is good to understand that, I think this is what's going to serve me best right now. That is great to understand. And absolutely, I would say I'm a beginner at trapeze, 100%, because that's what's going to serve me. It's not going to serve me to try an advanced trapeze class. That'd be awful. Okay, it's good for me to know where I am. But I think what happens is then we create this label around that. If I say I'm a beginner at trapeze, I'll just say, well, I guess I'm just a beginner. Well, that's not true. I can tell you with confidence I'm advanced in the Pilates realm for the most part. Again, not all the time, because when I have surgeries, I'm back to beginner. So that's what I mean. It's a spectrum. So just think of it more that way. Think of, what are my needs right now? Would I benefit from going to a beginner class? Even if I consider myself advanced, would I really benefit from that beginner class? Because it might offer me something that I haven't gotten before. Maybe I'll learn some breathing, and I'm not great at that breathing thing. So yes, absolutely, you can switch from a beginner labeled class to an intermediate. And I do that in Unlimited. You'll find a lot of different labels of classes, but just know that that could change too. Like, you might be possibly a beginner in Pilates, but maybe you're intermediate in weights. Okay, so each class will be different. But if you are have a goal, let's say it's Pilates, and you have a goal of moving on in Pilates, then yes, just going from beginner to intermediate is a great place to start. Another thing you can do is to add weights. That's what I did today on the lat pull down. So you can add some weights, whether it's dumbbells or machines or whatever it is, but not all at once. So this is something really important I want to touch on, because I talk about it in my classes all the time. And I think somehow, again, it's a mental block we have to get through and get over. You don't have to go, let's say you're lifting 5 pounds and you can get through one of my classes or 3 sets of 8 with 5 pounds pretty easily. And you're like, okay, it's time to go up. And I go up to 8 pounds and you go up to 8 pounds and you can only get through half the class, right? So let's say you're doing a full class, 5 pounds, easy, 8 pounds, whoa, I can only do half. A lot of times people then think, well, I'm not ready to go to 8 pounds. I better stay at 5. If you stay at 5 and it's gotten easy, never will that automatically mean that you can do 8 pounds for the whole class. Okay? You have to go a little at a time. And that is 100% allowed. And that's how you're going to build strength. Please don't ever think that doing something really easy for a year is suddenly going to allow you to do the really hard thing easily. It won't. Doing something really easily for a while just means that you've built enough foundation that you get to try the next progression, right? You get to try it. You're ready to try it. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's not meant to be easy. If it was easy, then you would just go to the next level after that. So let's say it's that class again. Do half of it with 8 pounds and then finish it out with 5. And then the next time, maybe you can do one more move with 8 pounds and finish with 5. You go gradually like that. Or you do something called a drop set if you're at the gym, where you do, 5 reps or however many reps you can with the heavier weight, and then you drop down to the lighter weight to finish your set. Today, when I did the lat pull downs, I did 2 reps with the really heavy weight, and then I went back to the other weight. And then maybe next time I can do 3 reps, or maybe I can just do 2, or maybe I can only do 1. But that's how you'll do it. I would never in a million years be able to jump to 3 sets of 8 on the heavy weight just because I could do 3 sets of 8 on the lighter weight. All right. So please know that that is how you will build strength. It takes like 1 rep at a time sometimes. Another way to make things harder is just try something totally different and new. So this goes back to my trapeze class. So I'll go all the way back to last year for you. Last year, we took a trip to the mountains to this great town that we love, and they have all these summer activities for kids. And they had an obstacle course that the kids loved, and my husband and I did it too. And we were so tired. It was like a American Ninja Warrior kind of obstacle course where a lot of pulling and pushing and grabbing with your arms and zip lines and that kind of thing. And it was really challenging for both of us, but we loved it. And we both said afterwards, we want to find a workout like that, like just uses your body in a totally different way. And it just showed me kind of where I needed to work. And I didn't find anything necessarily like it around us, but I got into this trapeze class, which reminded me of that, of the same muscles that were really weak or just what was challenging for me. So I've been doing it just to try something different and new. And it's just such a good lesson because we actually were back in the same mountain town this week and did the obstacle course again, which was a little bit easier for me, but still challenging. But it was really cool to remember that thing last year that was really hard for me. I didn't let it discourage me. I used it as motivation to say, cool, that's awesome. This is something I can work on. And that's really important. So not only trying things that are new, but also realizing the things that are hard for you, they're there to open up a door. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It probably means you should do it, actually. But you can find a different way into it. You can find a different road or a different door into that, okay? Like I didn't need to just keep doing that obstacle course over and over again. I could find another way into it. But just know when things are hard, that's not always a bad thing. It can take you into something new. Another way you can make things harder is obviously add some time. And again, that to me, that isn't the most realistic way to do it simply because we're all limited on time on our days. I would never tell a client, well, now just add more. I mean, eventually you're working out 2 or 3 hours a day, which is not what you need and it's not realistic. So adding time if you're working on endurance is definitely a possibility, but it's not the only way to do it. And then also changing 1 class a week at a time. So if you do feel like you're ready to make it harder, weights, if you're doing classes at home, Pilates, do 1 class a week and give yourself a few weeks to get used to that and see how it feels before you change something else. And the final lesson here, the final thing I want to touch on is don't change everything at once. All right. Don't say, oh, I'm going to add weights and reps and time and change that class. your body will probably not be happy about that. One thing at a time, okay? Change one thing at a time. So I have 2 points I want to touch on to kind of summarize and make sure that you remember leaving this podcast today. One is your end goal is not for things to look beautiful or perfect or to feel easy all the time. That is not going to happen. Yes, it'll happen sometimes. Yes, absolutely, you're going to get some of those picture perfect poses that you can post. Sometimes you'll have something that feels so easy that you walk away saying, yes, that's awesome. But it's not 100% of the time. And that isn't the way it's meant to be. We change, our bodies change, so how we feel about things change. So just kind of change that expectation a little bit. And then also know that it doesn't have to feel perfect in order for you to progress. Be comfortable being uncomfortable sometimes and take it one step at a time. You can add a little bit here, you can add a little bit there, but let yourself embrace that challenge sometimes. Let yourself embrace the difficulty when you're ready to be there. And then also honor yourself and your body when you aren't ready for that, when you need to be in that safe place of movement, then be there. Reap the rewards of that. Let it come into your body and soul so that you feel safe and empowered again, and then you can move forward into the rest. Thank you so much, as always, for being here. I am so happy to chat with you, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much for joining me today on Meet Your Body. If you have a moment, please consider rating and reviewing this podcast as it helps us tremendously. For more resources and workouts, you can visit my website, jessicavalantpilates.com, or find me on YouTube or Instagram at Jessica Valant Pilates.